Welcome to the Life Beyond Bounds podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Herdwalker. On this podcast, I give advice and insights that help you go beyond your comfort zone to embrace life as your greatest adventure, beyond geographical boundaries to explore the world without limits, beyond the confines of the norm to live life on your terms, and even beyond your current limits to unlock a life that is bold, adventurous, and genuinely fulfilling. Together, let's create your life beyond bounds. Hello, and welcome to the Life Beyond Bounds podcast. If you have ever felt a tug of war between two voices inside of you, one urging you toward change, toward following your dreams, toward creating more freedom, fulfillment, or adventure in your life, and the other clinging to comfort, safety, or choosing what feels practical, then this episode is for you. Today, we're going to explore the two key forces or voices within each of us that are guiding us daily, our soul and our ego, and how very different our life can be depending on which of those we choose to let lead. In this episode, I talk a lot about what I call the pull of your soul. Now, I wouldn't consider myself to be particularly woo. I don't say that with any judgment at all, just honesty. I'm not going to take you through a sound bath or ask you to consult your past lives because I know nothing about those things. But I am deeply curious about why we feel pulled in certain directions and why there's often a tension between the life that we're living and the one that we're quietly longing for. And this is the most honest and accurate way that I've found to explain why we can want something deeply for our life and yet still not pursue it. Why we can daydream about one thing but make choices that lead us somewhere else entirely. If you're someone who doesn't normally use words like soul, then don't check out. Please stick with me. I'll break it down in a way that's relatable and grounded because understanding this inner tug of war might be the very key to helping you make decisions that feel more true and finally start building the life that you really want. My goal is to keep this grounded, authentic, and empowering and help you to see that living a soul-led life doesn't mean being impractical or irresponsible, and that it can, in fact, mean you have more abundance, more freedom, and more choices. Think of the ego and the soul as two internal advisors with two very different agendas. Understanding their differences is the first step to recognizing who's really running the show in your life. One of the primary jobs of our ego is to keep us safe, and it does this by clinging to the familiar. It loves comfort, control, and certainty. The ego speaks loudly and insistently, often through fear and doubt. It's some of the mental chatter. It says, you better not try, you might look foolish, you might fail. To the ego, fear is a stop sign, a signal to retreat back into your safety zone, your safety net. It's narrative filled with, but what about the mortgage? But what if you're not good enough? What will people think? These questions are designed to protect you from risk, but they also end up keeping you small and stuck. The ego, built on survival instincts, thrives on maintaining the status quo. So even if you're unhappy or feeling unfulfilled, the ego will urge you to stick with what you know because at least it's safe. It can't see the future like your soul can, so it only knows that you're safe right now, and it doesn't want you to do another new thing ever again. But safe doesn't always mean safe from real harm or danger. It also means safe from discomfort and embarrassment as well. So this voice is often fueled by limiting beliefs, thoughts like, I'm not capable of that, or people like me can't just do something different. In short, the ego is all about fear, safety, and approval. It focuses on what could go wrong and what others expect. Your soul, on the other hand, is quieter and more subtle. It often shows up by, I think it's like a whisper or a gentle nudge, a gut feeling or an inspired what if idea that won't leave you alone. The soul is that deeper part of you craving freedom, fulfillment, and more adventure, more connection, and more alignment with your true self. Where the ego shouts with anxiety, the soul whispers the truth. The soul's messages might arise as daydreams, curiosities, or a persistent yearning for something more. It doesn't speak through fear, it speaks through possibility. And it doesn't say, don't quit your job, it's too risky. Instead, it might say, you know you've always wanted to start that business. What if it works out? The soul is expansive and fearless in vision. It sees fear not as a stop sign, but as a signpost pointing toward the growth that you need, which then leads you down the path that you're really meant for. In fact, to the soul, fear can be a compass directing you to the exact thing that you're meant to do or experience in order to grow. The soul values purpose and joy over approval, and it asks things like, what lights me up? What do I truly desire? And trust that pursuing those things will not only fulfill you, but often serve others too. This voice often comes with a sense of calm, clarity, or excitement rather than anxiety. You might notice it when you feel in the flow, deeply curious, or viscerally excited, even if you're also a bit scared in that. The ego tries to protect your identity. They both have their purpose. The soul and the ego, they both have a purpose. Your ego's there to keep you from making these reckless decisions and help you function in a day-to-day world, where your soul urges you to evolve and seek deeper meaning in life. But problems arise when the ego's voice drowns out your soul's voice completely. If we never listen to those inner whispers, we can end up living a life that isn't truly ours, and one that might look fine on the outside but feels hollow on the inside. So how do these voices show up in real life? Let's paint a picture of each one. An ego-led life is one where the ego's voice, the voice of fear, safety, and limiting beliefs, is effectively in charge of most of your decisions. This is the default mode for most people. So if you recognize these signs, you are definitely not alone. Here are 4 signs that can help you determine if you're allowing your ego to dictate your decisions and therefore determine the quality of your life. First, you're clinging to comfort and familiarity. You find yourself stuck in your comfort zone in various areas of life. Maybe you stay in a job or career that leaves you uninspired because it's stable and you fear the uncertainty of pursuing what you truly want. Or you decline opportunities like traveling to a new country, switching industries, starting a side business because it's not the right time or it's too risky. And deep down, those reasons are often the ego. It's disguising fear as practicality. The ego loves routine and what is known. It will prioritize the devil you know over the unknown every single time. As author Steve Conley notes, the ego clings to certainty and resists change. And while that can feel comfortable for a while, it can turn your comfort zone into a prison that stifles growth. If you catch yourself saying, I'd love to do X, but I just can't, with no real external obstacle, just an inner feeling of I shouldn't, that's a clue your ego is running the show. Okay, second is making fear-based decisions. In an ego-led life, fear tends to dictate your choices. You might notice that when you imagine making a bold change, you're almost immediately flooded with worst case scenarios. For instance, suppose you dream of moving to a new city or country. An ego-led response might be an anxious mental list. What if I hate it there? What if I can't find a job? What if this ruins my resume? Similarly, you might hesitate to end an unfulfilling relationship because what if I end up alone forever? The specifics vary for everybody, but the pattern is the same. The ego emphasizes everything that could go wrong. It's essentially using fear as a convincing argument to stay put. Psychologists often say our mind, or ego, is wired this way from evolution. It's trying to protect us from danger, But like I said, in modern life, that can also just mean keeping us from a little bit of discomfort or embarrassment. It's not real danger. So the result, we stay overcautious. We procrastinate on our dreams and label it being responsible. We rationalize staying small by telling ourselves stories like, I can't because, or I shouldn't because. The ego's protection feels like a warm blanket, but it can smother the sparks and inspiration your soul is trying to send. Third is having good enough syndrome. Another sign of an ego-led life is frequently settling for less than you deeply desire and telling yourself that you should just be content. Perhaps you have a nagging sense of that your life could be more vibrant, exciting, or meaningful, but you brush it aside with thoughts like, this is good enough. I have no right to complain. That's your ego again, using complacency to keep you safe. I've been there too. Before I started Beyond Bounds and before we started traveling full-time as a family, I had a very comfortable life by society standards. Everything was fine. And my ego would say, why rock the boat? You have it better than many. Don't be ungrateful by wanting more. But as I eventually realized, and maybe you have too, fine isn't the same as fulfilled. I was leaving big dreams on the table. And by suppressing those, you suppress your light, and the world needs your light. The ego will have you believe that mediocrity and safety is preferable to chasing your dreams and risking failure. But consider the cost of that belief. Many people wake up years later to discover they never pursued what truly mattered to them. In fact, in the reflections of those at life's end, a common regret is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. This was the number one regret recorded by a palliative care nurse, I think Bronnie Ware is her name, who noted that most people had not honored even half of their dreams by the time that they died. Why? Often because their decisions were driven by fear, other people's expectations, classic ego-led behavior. And so it's a reminder to us how those decisions can really impact and change our life when we let our ego lead. The fourth is seeking approval from others. You're concerned with how others are viewing you, and if they are approving of you. Maybe suppressing your own opinions and trying to avoid judgment is another sign that you're letting your ego lead. The ego craves validation and approval. So it asks, will people like me or praise me if I do this? It might keep you grinding away to meet society's definition of success, the promotion, the big salary, the perfect Instagrammable life, even if that success feels hollow to you. And hand in hand with that comes perfectionism, an ego trap that says you must do things flawlessly or not at all, because any failure or criticism threatens the ego's self-image. This can paralyze you from trying new things or taking risks, since new endeavors inevitably involve learning and making some mistakes. If you've ever thought, I'll follow that dream someday when I'm ready or perfectly prepared, your ego is stalling you. Ready is an illusion. We're never really ready, but the ego doesn't really want you to know that. So does any of this sound familiar to you? If it does, don't worry. Ego-led tendencies are the human default to some extent. We all have an ego, and it will pipe up whenever we consider stepping beyond our known limits. The key isn't to eliminate the ego. You can't, and you don't need to, but to become aware of it. When you can catch those ego-driven thoughts in the act, oh, that's just fear talking, etc., you create space to hear another voice that's been there all along, and that is the voice of your soul. Before we talk about how to listen to that soul voice, let's clarify what living a soul-led life actually looks like and feels like, because it might sound a bit mystical, but it's actually very practical and very empowering. A soul-led life is one where your primary guide is that inner knowing that you have, that intuitive pull toward what feels deeply meaningful or alive to you, even if it doesn't fully make sense to your logical mind at first. When you follow the pull of your soul, it doesn't mean you abandon all reason or responsibility. It means you allow your heart and your purpose to have a say in your choices and not just your fears. Here are 5 characteristics of a soul-led life. First is following your inner whispers or being curious about the nudges you feel toward more. In a soul-led life, you pay attention to those whispers and nudges. Remember that the soul often speaks in subtleties, a persistent idea, a dream that keeps resurfacing, a surge of excitement or even envy when you see someone doing something and think, I wish I could do that. Instead of dismissing these as silly or impossible, you treat them as clues. You might not act on them all immediately, but you acknowledge them. For example, if you've always felt drawn to writing a book, a soul-led approach would be to honor that pull in some way. So maybe you start journaling regularly or join a writing workshop, just to give your soul an outlet. The amazing thing is, the more you listen, the more clearly you hear. It's like building trust with a friend. Your soul's voice gets louder, or maybe you just become more attuned to it, the more that you validate it. You might start to notice patterns. Perhaps your soul speaks through your curiosity. Maybe you find yourself gravitating toward certain articles, videos, or people related to a certain topic or lifestyle. That's a nudge. A soul-led life has room for exploration of those nudges. It doesn't shove what if aside. It says, let's see where this leads. Okay, next is choosing courage over comfort or being growth-oriented. One of the clearest markers of a soul-led path is a willingness to choose growth over comfort, at least more often than not. This means that when you feel both scared and excited by an idea, you lean toward it instead of away from it. It's not that soul-led people don't feel fear. I can assure you that they do. They simply learn to interpret fear differently. It doesn't always mean stop. Sometimes it's actually saying, like, there's something really valuable on the other side of this if you have the courage to go that way. In other words, fear becomes a compass pointing towards growth. If something sparks fear or fascination, it's often exactly the thing that your soul wants you to explore. For instance, I've shared before that my family and I made a bold decision to sell our home and nearly all of our belongings, to travel and live in an RV for 2 years, and then after that, full-time internationally for 2 years as well. And there are times my ego was panicking over that decision, trying its hardest to derail us. I had all the classic fears. What if this is a huge mistake? What about the kids' schooling? Don't they need stability? What if we hate RV life or something goes wrong? Those fears were very loud and very convincing. But beneath them was a calmer voice, even, I would say, a knowing, that was saying, this adventure is what your soul is craving. And the freedom, the family bonding, the growth that will come from breaking out of the mold is exactly what you're meant for. So that side of me was whispering about the exciting possibilities, while the ego was shouting about potential pitfalls. We ultimately chose to listen to our souls, obviously, and yes, it was uncomfortable at first, but I can't even begin to articulate all that we would have missed if we listened to our egos and stayed put in our home in Ohio for these past 4 years. We've encountered challenges, sure, but also unforgettable adventures and a sense of living fully that we wouldn't trade for the world. A soul-led life, therefore, often involves doing things that scare you in the service of something that matters more than the fear. Each act of courage expands your comfort zone and your confidence. It's like flexing a muscle. So over time, choosing courage becomes more natural. You start to trust that. There's an author, Joseph Campbell, he said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. By consistently stepping into the unknown, you discover new facets of yourself and new opportunities that simply never come to those who always play it safe. Courage isn't about recklessness, it's about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, with wisdom and support. And with each bold step, your world gets bigger. Another sign that you're following the pull of your soul is alignment and authenticity. Living a soul-led life instead of an ego-led life brings a profound sense of alignment with who you really are. You start making choices that feel right in your gut, even if they're not conventional. This might mean your life starts to look more unique or less cookie cutter. You may find yourself pursuing a passion as a career or side gig, setting boundaries in relationships that were draining you, or prioritizing experiences like travel, creativity, being of service to others that feed your soul rather than only doing what society says you should do. A soul-led person tends to have a certain grounded authenticity. You become more you. You might notice that you're happier and more at peace, even if life is by no means perfect. Why? Because there's congruence between your inner self and your outer life. When you wake up in the morning, there's a sense of purpose or possibility that wasn't there before. It won't all go as you hope. That's life. But even on tough days, you can reassure yourself that at least I'm being true to myself. I'm on the path I chose, not one I defaulted into, right? So people around you might also notice this change. I've had clients whose friends say, you seem different in a good way, lighter, more confident. And that's the glow of authenticity. It's attractive and it's contagious. And by living your truth, you often inspire others to do the same, even without trying. Another sign that you're following the pull of your soul is listening to your intuition over external approval. In a soul-led life, you give more weight to your own intuition and values than to the peanut gallery of outside opinions. This is huge. It doesn't mean you ignore wise counsel from others who have already done the thing that you want to do. It means you don't let fear of criticism or rejection be the deciding factor. If your soul is pulling you towards, say, starting a community project or switching careers at 40, and your friends or family raise eyebrows, you don't automatically abandon your plan out of shame. Instead, you stand in your truth and say, I understand your concern, but this feels right for me. It takes strength, but remember, most of society operates from the ego level. So many well-meaning people will project their own fears onto you. So they might say that's risky when they mean they would be afraid to do it. A big part of allowing your soul to lead is recognizing this dynamic is not letting it derail you. You become more internally referenced for your decisions. So what you know inside matters more than what others say. A wonderful side effect is that when you live this way, you also grant others the freedom to follow their own path. You no longer need to seek constant approval, and you no longer feel the need to judge others' choices either. So there's a mutual respect of you do you and I'll do me, and that makes for healthier relationships. And finally, when you follow the pull of your soul, you embrace uncertainty and you trust life. Living a soul-led life involves a good deal of trust in yourself and in life. Because let's face it, when you follow your soul, you will often step into the unknown. There aren't guarantees or a clear roadmap for many of the big leaps of faith. Yet, those who follow their soul's lead develop an outlook that even if things don't go as planned, I will learn and grow from it. It's a belief that life is happening for you, not to you, and that your intuition will guide you through whatever comes. When we were renovating our RV and preparing to take off, there were so many unknowns. Our egos hate uncertainty. It wants a step-by-step plan. But our soul knows that you'll figure it out as you go and trust that you can handle whatever challenges come your way. We knew nothing about RVing. In fact, we had never set foot in an RV until we looked at the one that we bought. We were clueless, but we knew we would learn what we needed to along the way. We could see that plenty of other people had figured this thing out. so it wasn't all that unique and it must not be all that hard. We encountered plenty of hiccups in our 2 years of traveling all over the west coast of the US and down to Baja, Mexico, and we overcame them all. Our fears are almost always far worse in our imagination than in reality. Now, why does all this matter? Let's talk about the stakes. What's the payoff of allowing your soul to lead, and what's the cost if you don't? Choosing to listen to your soul more often than listening to your ego leads to a completely different life, one that is more passionate, more purpose-filled, more fulfilling, more courageous, more authentic, and more exciting. When you let your soul lead, it raises your vibration and it attracts more of what you want to you. It also gives others permission to do the same. You might be thinking, okay, this sounds inspiring in theory, but can I just keep things the way they are and maybe I'll listen to my soul later when it's more convenient? It's human to feel that way. Change is hard, and the ego will always prefer later, which often turns into never. Making this one personal change in your life could be more powerful than any other change that you could make. First, your fulfillment and your happiness are at stake. When you allow your ego to lead, you might achieve a sort of numb comfort, an average happiness or fulfillment, but rarely deep joy or satisfaction. Think about the people you know, or maybe it's you who you see in the mirror, who are just going through the motions. On paper, things might be very good, but there's a light that's dimmed. They have unfulfilled dreams, shelved aspirations, or parts of themselves they've never explored. That often manifests as a lingering sense of restlessness, frustration, or emptiness, and over time it can turn into bitterness or cynicism. Earlier, I mentioned the voices of older folks who ignored their soul's voice, and they often become the ones who say, it's too late for me, and carry this regret. On the flip side, people who take soul-led paths, even if modest, often exude contentment, that they are at peace with living life their way. As the artist Sarah Field observed, those who follow their soul's journey tend to be at peace and don't feel the world has wronged them, whereas those who ignore it can become perpetually dissatisfied. By choosing the soul over the ego, you set yourself up to be that person who later in life can say, I gave it my all, I followed my heart, and I have no regrets. To me, that's priceless, and that is what I consider living life beyond bounds. All right, second, your potential and growth depend on it. An ego-led life keeps you small, as we discussed. You never know what you're truly capable of because you rarely test your limits, whereas following the pull of your soul calls forth all of your potential. It's often said that everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. When you challenge your fears, you discover talents, strengths, and opportunities you never would have encountered otherwise. You grow into a more powerful version of yourself. You might discover a new career, create art, start a nonprofit, make a big lifestyle change like moving abroad, taking a gap year to travel with your family, or form more incredible relationships, all because you followed a soul nudge that the ego wanted to ignore. In my own life, I can trace all of the most enriching experiences back to moments when I chose following my soul over listening to my ego. Moving to new countries despite not knowing anyone there, changing careers, becoming an entrepreneur by getting into home renovation and design, then pivoting to start a business online to give us more freedom and choices, starting this podcast, and embarking on our incredible adventure as a family. None of those were sure things. All of them felt uncertain, but each one expanded my life enormously. Each one made me more confident for the next. This growth is not just for you either. When you grow, you can contribute more to the world. You can serve from a place of authenticity, perhaps even inspire others to break their own chains of fear. Living your purpose often has a ripple effect, touching family, friends, and even strangers. Consider the cost of inaction. We often think staying in our comfort zone has no cost. It feels like zero risk, but that's an illusion. There is a risk, the risk of stagnation, the risk of waking up in a life that feels dull and realizing that you've been in the passenger seat while fear did the driving. The risk of having regrets. There's a quote that says, if you think adventure is dangerous, try routine. It's lethal. Lethal to the spirit, that is. When you repeatedly ignore your soul's whispers, they may grow faint. You can lose touch with what you really want. You might even forget that you once had passion and dreams. That's a kind of living death. Walking around alive, but not truly living. I don't mean to sound dramatic, but I've seen it happen to many people, and maybe you have too. This is why making the shift matters. To feel alive and genuinely fueled by your life, not somebody else's. And let's not forget, there's also the matter of legacy and example. If you have children or anyone looking up to you, consider what message you send by your choices. An ego-led life often perpetuates more fear and playing small in the next generation. We do what we see, after all, right? But if your kids, for instance, see you take courageous steps to align your life with your values and passions, that is incredibly powerful. They learn that it's okay to pursue their dreams, that fear is not a deal breaker, and that life is meant to be lived fully. One of our big motivators, my husband and I, for leaning into the nudges we feel and allowing ourselves to follow our dreams even when they seem crazy, is to show our kids what an empowered, intentional life looks like. One where they get to define what success and happiness mean for them. It's hard to teach that if I'm not living it myself. The world needs more soul-led people. It might sound exaggerated, but I truly believe that every individual who has the courage to let their soul lead makes a difference in the collective. Imagine a world where more people pursued work that fulfilled them. We'd have happier workplaces and businesses for sure. Or if more people stepped out of their fear of the unknown and traveled, learning about other cultures, we'd have more understanding and empathy in the world and less prejudice. Deciding which side of you to let lead leads to a completely different life. It's the difference between merely existing and truly living. Most people default to an ego-led life without even realizing it. It's the norm. It's the norm to stick to your comfort zone, to that stable job that you don't love, the familiar routines, because they feel safe and predictable, even if it means being unhappy or unfulfilled. But here's the thing that I've learned. Life inside your comfort zone can be good, but it can't be exceptional. That requires choosing courage and clarity over fear or limiting beliefs, leaning into whimsy of life just a little bit more, taking calculated risks, and actively creating a life that fuels you. If all this sounds exciting, but you're thinking, great, but what about my career or my family or paying my bills? In my next episode, I'm going to give you practical tips for creating a more authentic, aligned life by following the pull of your soul that unlocks even more abundance, freedom, and choices than you have now without throwing all caution to the wind. Choosing to let your soul lead doesn't have to mean being reckless or ignoring worldly realities. It means living on purpose. It means choosing your life consciously rather than living by default. You can take care of your responsibilities and honor your dreams. In fact, you might find new creative ways to meet your responsibilities because you're following your soul. For example, finding, starting a business that supports your family and fuels you rather than thinking it's an either or. Be sure to subscribe so that you receive a notification when the next episode is released, and come join me behind the scenes in our Life Beyond Bounds community on Facebook. I would love to connect with you there. Together, let's create your life beyond bounds.